What an immense joy to have you here with me at this very special moment. I want to share something deeply meaningful, something that can transform the way you see life's difficulties. That's why I invite you to take a few minutes to disconnect from distractions. Focus on this message and allow God to speak to your heart in a powerful way. If you are not yet part of our community, take this opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to activate the notification bell so you can receive all the messages we share here. Also, if this message touches your heart, don't hesitate to like and share it with your friends, family, and even in that group that sometimes seems to be just chaos. You never know when a simple word can be exactly what someone needs to hear to change their life. Today, I want to talk to you about a topic that has certainly crossed many people's minds, and at some point, may have been one of your biggest questions. What to do when everything seems to go wrong? This is a delicate subject because naturally, within us, there is a sense of justice, an expectation that if we do everything right, everything will turn out well. But reality does not always follow this logic. Sometimes we do our best, plant good seeds, stay faithful to our principles, and in the end, it seems like everything falls apart. Have you ever felt this way? I have, and I must admit, those were difficult days of questioning, sleepless nights, trying to understand why certain things happen. But it was precisely in those moments of uncertainty that the Holy Spirit brought me an answer that completely changed my perspective on life and God's ways. To illustrate this, I want to bring up a well-known biblical example that always impacts me deeply. Let's talk about Daniel. This man was an example of faithfulness to God. He was upright, never strayed from the Lord's ways, prayed 3 times a day, and lived in an irreproachable manner. Even so, because of the envy and wickedness of those around him, he was thrown into the lion's den. Pause for a moment and think, where is the logic in that? How can a man who did everything right be punished in such a way? If we look only through human eyes, this situation seems like a great injustice. But when we see through spiritual eyes, we understand that God had a greater purpose for Daniel. That trial, which seemed like a great failure in the natural realm, was actually God's way of manifesting his power. Daniel was not devoured by the lions. He came out unharmed, and his faith was used as a testimony to impact an entire nation. This principle repeats itself many times in our lives. Sometimes we go through losses, injustices, and challenges that seem senseless. I remember a story my grandfather told me when I was a child, one that, years later, made perfect sense to me. He was always a hard-working man, dedicated to the land. He cared for his crops with great diligence and hope. But 3 times he lost everything. At the time, he was devastated. He felt like all his efforts had been in vain. But years later, as he looked back on his journey, he realized that those losses were actually deliverances. If his crops had prospered, he would never have moved to the city, never would have discovered new opportunities, never would have built the family he did. And more than that, if he hadn't gone through all of that, maybe I wouldn't even be here today, sharing this story. This helped me understand something that changed the way I face difficulties. When we trust in God, even what seems to go wrong is actually going right. Because God has a much broader vision than we do. He sees what we cannot. While we think we are experiencing a failure, He is leading us toward a greater purpose. So if today you are facing a difficult moment, if you feel like everything is going wrong, if you wonder why certain doors have closed, or why some situations have spun out of your control, I want to encourage you not to be discouraged. Keep being faithful, keep sowing goodness, remain steadfast in your faith. Because at the right time, God will show you that every detail was part of a much greater plan. God's harvest does not always come in the way we expect, but when it does, it is always far greater and better than we could have imagined. Believe in this and keep your faith unshakable, for He who promised is faithful to fulfill it. May God bless you, your home, and your family. See you in the next message.